How's it going, YouTube? My name's Ninja 7, your resident Mistweaver Monk, and you guys have been commenting, asking me what my thoughts are on these changes, so I figured might as well make a quick video talking about this. So these are healer adjustments that are coming at the start of Season 4. They're already live on the PTR. I have not tested since these changes came. That's what I'm doing all day today. But in Season 4, they're reducing the overall throughput of some of the healers to better align with their tuning goals. So they're bringing down the top end. And then at the same time, they're going to increase the comparative power level of Holy Paladin, Prez Evoker, and Holy Priest without needing to adjust those. So they're bringing down the top end, and it's going to make these feel better because they're going to be more in line with the other healers. So what are these changes? Well, first off, the big one, they're reducing all healing done by 13% for Mistweaver Monks. Now, this is what I keep getting questions about. Everyone's like, I want to see his reaction. And I think we're all used to, myself included, when a YouTuber or a content creator's class or spec gets nerfed, it's always a bad thing, and I feel like there's no way around it because it is upsetting. However, I do take a different approach in these things. I try to be more practical and stuff, and I do think we have been long overdue for another adjustment like this. I mean, in Season 3, the numbers kind of show we're kind of just killing it on the throughput charts. And yes, we kind of only bring throughput. And historically, when classes only bring throughput, they should kind of be tuned a bit more in that category. But this is kind of, it's just a lot. It's just a lot more than other healers. Like our ceiling is a lot higher. Our floor is even higher. And for a hard spec, that's saying a lot. You know, I'm sure there are some outliers out here, but yeah, I mean, this is just Season 3. And when we look at this graph, already Holy Paladin is in the thick of it. And whenever I look at these changes, I'm always thinking about Holy Paladin because we know that they're going to be in a rough spot in Season 4 because they are coming back to their Season 2 tier set. But with all of the nerfs that have hit them since then, I mean, even Daybreak, it's still going to give them less mana back, even though the cooldown is going back to a minute. So when you look at data like this, like we just don't have access to Season 4 raid data yet. I'm sure they do. I'm sure they've been testing it on their end. But it's so hard to look at a chart like this, the Season 3 Mistweaver numbers, and compare it to like the Season 2 Paladin numbers because one, bosses were totally different. So you just had less incoming damage or different incoming damage. You had different damage windows. Once again, Holy Paladin just performed differently back then. And there's also the fact that Mistweaver just had ad healing fights like Fyrak or Larador in Season 4. So things just like looked better for Mistweaver. So it's just there are so many like metrics that we just can't calculate by just using our brain power. We need to see it. We need to see the numbers, see the data to see how it works out. But that's my take, is there needed to be something done, but I'll touch on that more in just a second. But first, let's blast through this list. So they're doing a similar change to both the restoration specs. So Druid is seeing a 5% decrease, and Shaman is seeing a 5% decrease. Restoration Druid is keeping their tier set. Nothing else is changing. So with the Mistweaver, if we just look at this chart, the Season 3 chart, they're receiving about a 13% nerf. So that would put them about here on the charts. Their top end will probably land around here, just really roughly, if you just take 13% off this, which I guess it's 13 relative percent. So it might be a little lower than that. But then Resto Druid will kind of land about the same way, about like right here, because they're losing about 5%. Resto Shaman is going back to their old tier set, so I could pull up their old tier set, the chart from that season. But once again, that just wouldn't help because the numbers would look different compared to the other healer specs. So it's just so hard to collect data from rating without being able to test it. But now moving on to Discipline Priest, they have a couple more changes and they're a bit more in depth, but the devs say that they want to balance healers in raids. So part of doing that is to reduce the healing output in raid for Disc Priest without affecting them in other content like PvP and Mythic Plus and Open World, I guess. But so their changes are Atonement transfers 35% of the healing or damage into healing instead of 40%. So already nerfing this by 5%. So an overall 12.5% nerf to Atonement, which is their main source of healing. So Already a little sus, but once you keep reading, it kind of gets a little better. That in raid, it will be a 12.5% nerf. Oh, and to atonement, not to their overall healing, but to their biggest source. And then atonement healing is increased by 70% outside of raids, whereas it was just increased by 50%. So a 20% overall buff to atonement in Mythic Plus and in open world, things like that. But that is stacked on top of a 12.5% nerf. All right, so let's calculate what it's doing in Mythic Plus, though. Currently in Season 3 versus what it's going to do in Season 4. Okay, so how do we do that? So we have 100% of the normal damage times, what was it doing before? Okay, so 0.4, and then we multiply that times 1.5, because their atonement was doing 50% more damage outside of raids. So they were doing about 60% of their damage as atonement healing. I think that's right. And then we can look at what it looks like now. It will be 100 times 0.35, and then multiply that times 1.7. And that gives us, okay, so it actually works out to be a slight nerf, going down like about the smallest amount of a nerf. Mistweaver's got a nerf like this before where it was like such a negligible number, but it works out to be about the same in Mythic Plus. So all in all, not too much change for Discipline Priest, other than in Raid, their atonements are going to be doing 12.5% less healing. So that kind of sucks. But really quickly, before we end this video, I want to talk about like all of this as a whole. I've kind of touched on it throughout the video, but one big thing about these tunings, these major tunings where you tune a bunch of classes all at once, is ideally, I take the firm stance that it is more ideal for the player base, for us, if they bring the bottom end up to match the top end or land somewhere near the top end, as opposed to bringing the top end down, at least making us kind of meet in the middle. However, I'm not blind in that statement. I do know that there are some like negatives to just always bringing the bottom end up, because then we would have infinite scaling. If everything just kept getting buffed, it'd be crazy. And then if the bottom end just kept getting buffed to match the top end, then we would get to a point where everything was like close to balance, which I guess is good, but then it would mean that everything's solved and nothing would change. It would just not feel fresh anymore. So things like this do have to happen every now and then, and a Season 4 is a great time for these crunches. However, it's gonna feel a little impactful outside of rating, because for example, as a Mistweaver Monk, there are some bosses or some dungeons that have a lot of healing check moments in this tier. And as you probably saw today, I am working on guides on all the dungeons, so stay tuned for that, with a healer in mind. But like, for example, Halls of Infusion, the third boss, just continuously does rotting damage, and that's the whole healing check, is how good are you at your normal rotation, and how good are you at spacing out your healer cooldowns to be able to combat this incoming damage. Now, this worries me about, like, are these classes going to struggle more with that boss now? Like, or are they just going to feel like these other, like the ones that are worse, like the Holy Paladin, Holy Priest, Presovoker? Are they all going to feel equally bad on that boss, or what's that going to feel like? But then I got to thinking, like, yes, our overall healing is reduced by 13%, but we do have some pretty major healing sources that are calculated based on our damage. And I'm pretty sure, I'll have to test this, or you guys can tell me down in the comments below, but whenever they do these nerfs to like a blanket nerf to healing across the board, it doesn't really touch those mechanics that are calculated based off damage. For example, atonement. If they were to just say, hey, Discipline Priest has 5% less healing, that wouldn't necessarily affect atonement unless they also said, and they do 5% less damage. So that's why you see adjustments like this one. Also like this one, this PvP adjustment for my PvP viewers. I don't know if I have any of those, but Ancient Teachings will transfer now 375% of its damage to healing instead of 412. So a nerf to that in PvP. So I'm pretty sure our maintenance healing is still going to be at full power. It's going to be based on our damage. Like the healing number is calculated based off of our damage. I don't think there's any modifiers that come from like spell power in that healing calculation. The spell power, I'm sure, deals with the damage calculation, but I don't think any of those numbers calculate the healing number. So I think ancient teachings kind of went untouched here. Same with like Awakened Phalanx, but I'm pretty sure Jade Fire Stomp does get hit by this. Like any direct healing source, Vivify, Enveloping Mist, Renewing Mist, like all those are going to be hit, which sucks, and it'll definitely, you'll feel the impact in Mythic Plus, I think, more than in Raid. But yeah, in Raid we were kind of cranking. Look, hands up, we're guilty. They caught us, but I'm not mad about these changes. I do think every now and then you need to nerf the top end, but I think they need to start more often throughout the seasons bringing that bottom end up, because I would have loved to see, instead of reading all of these changes, I would have loved to read Holy Paladin healing buffed by 13%, Prez buffed by 5%, Holy Priest buffed by 5%. Strictly for the reason that I don't want Season 4 to feel like Season, I think, 1 felt, where, okay, let's just compare Mythic Plus Season 3 to Season 1. Season 1, you could push as high in a key as your healer could manage. Once your healer stopped being able to heal the mechanics fast enough, that was the cap. That's where you could push. That's where top end keys ended. But then in Season 3, it became about one-shot mechanics. You can push to plus 31s, but then in a plus 32, this would one-shot you through a defensive, that kind of thing. And I don't know which one's more healthy for the game, but as a healer, I would prefer to go until things one-shot you than to go until I feel like I'm not good enough. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want to land back there, because healers did not enjoy Season 1 at all. I don't know a single healer that actually enjoyed pushing in Season 1. So yeah, I don't want us to feel weaker and to kind of like be the problem that keys fail, because DPS aren't getting adjusted like this, and DPS are cranking right now. Season 3 DPS did more damage than I can remember. So DPS are going to feel great. Tanks are still super tanky, going to feel great. But then healers are getting adjusted to be a little worse. So I just don't think that metric, yeah, you can balance healers versus each other. But if you had a bar graph that had 3 bars on it, one was tank, DPS, and healer, and it was just like on the y-axis, just like relative power level, I feel like they should all try to be as equal as possible, but when you kind of like nerf one and the other two feel great, it feels way different. Like, it feels bad to play this bottom bar spec. Hopefully hopefully you guys can visualize that. But yeah, all in all, something needed to change. This is unfortunate, but probably the best thing that they could have done. I would have liked to have gotten into Season 4 raid testing first. Like, if week 1 started for raid and we actually do see that Mistweavers are still cranking way more than every other spec, then hit us with the nerf axe after week 1. Because it's just like I said, we don't have data on Restoration Shaman's old tier set versus Mistweaver's new tier set, for example, things like that. So I would have liked to see these changes come later, but all in all, something needed to change. I'm not mad about it at all. I just, it's just weird. I don't know why they do the things they do when they do them, if I'm being totally honest, but hey, I'm just along for the ride. I'm staying Mistweaver. I love Mistweaver. It's going to be a fun season. I'm excited to stream and to push keys with you guys. So if you want to check out my stream, twitch.tv/elbninja7. I also stream on YouTube, so make sure that you guys are subscribed. Hit that bell. I never hit the bell, but apparently it's really good if you want to catch a stream. And make sure that you like this video if you like what I had to say, or if I at least eased your anger a little bit, or maybe hit dislike if I made you even more angry. I don't know. I'm just here. I'm a face on a screen, so... But thank you guys so much for the support, and especially thank you to the patrons of this channel. I say it at the end of every video, but these guys are the absolute #1 reason why I am still here able to make YouTube videos. So thank you so much for carrying this channel. And if you want to see your name alongside these guys and help support the channel like they do, check out that Patreon link down in the description below. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. I said it'd be short. It's not that short. I'm sorry. But I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.